Tonight, after market close, Goldman Sachs will confirm the pricing of the largest IPO in history at $135 a share, valuing SpaceX at $1.75 trillion. Morningstar's analysts say the company is worth between $600 billion and $800 billion. You're being asked to pay more than twice that. ICE denied having a database of protesters, while its own director's letter to Congress acknowledged the agency maintains records on people who were never arrested and received calls telling them they'd be added to terrorism watch lists for standing 10 feet away from agents and observing them. And cars are burning in Belfast after a Sudanese man stabbed someone, and far-right groups mobilized within hours to riot against immigrant communities across Northern Ireland. Let's go. In a few hours, SpaceX becomes a public company. By tomorrow morning, any American with a brokerage account can own a piece of the seventh largest company in the United States at a price that independent financial analysis says is somewhere between twice and 3 times what the business is fundamentally worth. TradingView's analysis of the S1 financials, published yesterday, laid it out clearly. Morningstar's fair value estimates for SpaceX, based on the actual cash flows the business generates, particularly from Starlink, range from $600 billion to $800 billion. The $1.75 trillion IPO valuation prices in, as TradingView put it, most long-term optionality at IPO day one, which is another way of saying you are paying today for outcomes that have not happened and may not happen. The $600 to $800 billion estimate is for what exists. The $1.75 trillion is for a story about what might exist in 2040. The financials on the existing business are worth reading carefully before the opening bell tomorrow. Starlink, the company's primary revenue anchor, posted $11.4 billion in 2025 revenue, with $4.4 billion in operating profit and 63% EBITDA margins. That is genuinely strong. The subscriber base has grown from 4.5 million at the start of 2025 to 10.3 million by early 2026. Real growth, real cash generation. The bull case rests here, and it is not irrational. The xAI division, the artificial intelligence company that Musk merged into SpaceX in February, consumed 76% of total group capital expenditure in Q1 2026 alone. The xAI segment is generating operating losses of more than $6 billion annually, according to TradingView's reading of the S1. The EPS for the combined entity is negative $2.94. You are buying a company that, in aggregate, loses money, where the profitable Starlink business is being used to fund an AI division burning through capital at a rate that would be remarkable even if xAI were a standalone company. The MSCI announced June 9th that it will apply its standard large IPO early inclusion treatment to SpaceX. That means passive index funds tracking MSCI indexes will be required to add SPCX to their portfolios within the first 30 to 90 trading days after listing, regardless of what the stock does on opening day. This is structural demand that exists independently of any investor's view on whether $135 is the right price. Anyone with a pension fund, a 401k, or an index-tracking retirement account that includes MSCI indexes will own SpaceX within the next 3 months, whether or not they chose to. And then there is the detail CNBC reported this week that deserves far more attention than the IPO coverage has given it. Chatter is building, CNBC said, that Musk's ultimate goal is to combine SpaceX with Tesla. If that happens, if the $1.75 trillion rocket and AI company merges with the $1.75 trillion rocket, $6 trillion electric vehicle company, the terms of that merger will be set by Musk, who controls 85% of SpaceX's votes and a dominant position in Tesla. The people who bought SPCX at $135 tomorrow will be told what their shares are worth in the combined entity by the man who controls both companies and has every incentive to structure the deal in favor of the entity he cares about more at that moment. Tonight is the last night that buying SpaceX is a choice. After MSCI inclusion processes, for tens of millions of Americans, it will be automatic. Now ICE, because what NPR published Wednesday deserves the kind of careful unpacking it has not received in the brief news cycle it generated. For months, the Department of Homeland Security has denied that it maintains a database of protesters or a database of domestic terrorists tracking U.S. citizens. That denial has been the official position through questions in congressional hearings, through press inquiries, through lawsuits, and through the accumulation of anecdotes from people across the country who have reported being photographed, followed, and apparently tracked for doing nothing more than observing federal immigration operations in public. NPR reported Wednesday on a previously unpublicized letter sent by then-acting ICE Director Todd Lyons to members of Congress in April. In that letter, Lyons confirmed that the agency gives itself wide latitude to collect information on individuals suspected of potential violations of law, including interference with ICE operations or officer safety matters, and maintains records on people who were never arrested. Read those two things together. ICE denies a database of protesters. ICE's own director confirms the agency collects and maintains records on people who were never arrested for potential violations, including conduct that constitutes interference with officer safety. These are not contradictory statements if you accept that any database of people who were never arrested but who may have been near an ICE operation is simply not what ICE chooses to call a database of protesters. The distinction is semantic. The function is the same. NPR reported a specific case. Zenia Pantos, a pediatric occupational therapist, was driving to work in Portland, Maine in January when they saw masked federal agents and tinted window vehicles and stopped to observe, staying at least 10 feet away from agents, not interacting with them, not obstructing anything. An agent was seen photographing a nearby observer's license plate. Hours later, Pantos' spouse, Carly Williams, received a call from a blocked number. The caller said, "You should let her know to not do that anymore, because people who are doing that type of thing are getting added to a domestic terrorist watch list." A federal employee, or someone claiming to be one, called a woman's spouse from a blocked number and told her that her wife, a pediatric occupational therapist who stood 10 feet away from agents to watch them, was going to be placed on a terrorism watch list. ICE's denial covers the word database. It does not cover that call. No one at DHS has explained who made it. No one has confirmed whether it represented official policy or a rogue agent acting outside authorization. The fact that it happened, was reported, and has produced no accountability from the agency is itself information about how ICE operates. The pattern NPR documented goes beyond this one case. Dozens of people across multiple cities have reported license plates being photographed at protests. People have reported being followed. Others have been visited at home. The administration's consistent response has been to deny the label. No database, no tracking program, no domestic terrorism file on protesters, while confirming the underlying data collection activities that a tracking program would require. The First Amendment protects the right to observe government operations in public. The right to photograph police and federal agents in public spaces has been upheld by federal courts. The right to observe, to bear witness, to stand 10 feet away and watch, these are not marginal exercises of constitutional protection. They are foundational to any accountability relationship between citizens and the government they fund. When an agency denies the label while confirming the function, and when a call like the one Carly Williams received is made by someone with access to that function and remains unexplained, the gap between "we don't have a database" and "we collect information on people near our operations who were never charged" is not a technical distinction. It is a political one. And the people most chilled by the existence of that gap are the ones most likely to stop showing up, which may be precisely the intended effect. And then Belfast, which is not a copycat of American politics, but is illuminated by understanding them. On Tuesday, a man described by police as Sudanese was arrested in Belfast after stabbing someone on a street in what witnesses described as a vicious, unprovoked attack. The victim survived. Within hours, far-right groups organized and protests began. By Tuesday evening, cars were on fire in East Belfast. Police were attacked with petrol bombs. Business premises were vandalized. UK leaders, Prime Minister Keir Starmer, Northern Ireland's first and deputy first ministers called for calm. The speed of the mobilization was striking. Within 12 hours of a single violent incident, a coordinated street presence had materialized across multiple locations. Euronews confirmed the sequence: the stabbing, the arrest of a Sudanese man, the far-right organizing, the fires, the political response. Northern Ireland is not a random location for this kind of incident to escalate. It is one of the most politically complex jurisdictions in Europe, a society that spent 30 years managing organized political violence and has developed both extraordinary resilience and deeply embedded networks of political mobilization on all sides. The far-right presence that organized within hours on Tuesday is connected to a broader European network of anti-immigration organizing that operates through messaging platforms, shares operational tactics, and treats incidents like the Belfast stabbing as recruitment and activation events. The individual crime is the pretext. The organizational response was pre-built. What makes this more than a British story is the pattern it reflects. France has seen it. Germany has seen it. Sweden has seen it. The Netherlands. In each case, a violent crime by a person identifiable as immigrant or Muslim or both triggers organized street violence against communities, not individuals. The perpetrator of the original crime is arrested. The people who bear the consequences of the riot are those who share his nationality or religion or appearance. The scale of harm shifts from one violent person to a community targeted collectively. The UK government's response, call for calm, condemn the violence, arrest the rioters, is the correct legal and institutional response. It is not the structural response. The structural response would require addressing the organizational infrastructure that makes it possible to mobilize rioting within 12 hours of a news story. That infrastructure exists on platforms. It is partly funded. It is coordinated across borders, and it cannot be addressed by a press release asking for calm. I'm not going to stand here and pretend this is simple. Some people in Belfast and across the UK hold legitimate concerns about the pace and scale of immigration and the adequacy of integration systems. Those concerns can be expressed through democratic means. What happened Tuesday night was not the expression of democratic concern. It was the application of organized violence against communities that bear no responsibility for an individual's act. Those are not the same thing, and treating them as the same, as though every act of anti-immigrant violence is a proportionate response to a legitimate grievance, is what allows the organizational infrastructure to sustain itself between incidents. 3 stories today, on the eve of everything changing at once. SpaceX prices tonight for $1.75 trillion, with $600 billion in actual underlying value. ICE denies a database, while confirming the collection activities a database would require. And nobody has explained the call to Carly Williams. And Belfast is burning for the same reason European cities keep burning, because the distance between a specific violent act and a coordinated attack on an entire community has been engineered down to hours by people who want it to be that short. The World Cup opens tonight in Mexico City. The first U.S. match is tomorrow at SoFi Stadium, the same day SPCX starts trading. The Iranian team plays in Los Angeles in 4 days. The world is not pausing to let any of this settle. Neither should you.